Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins. I'm joined as always by Brandon Scott. You know him as B. Scott. It is our 2023 Indianapolis Colts preview. And man, already do we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Anthony Richardson is our QB1. Jonathan Taylor seeking a trade. A lot of storylines out there. We're going to dive deep into all of those topics. We're also going to tell you, impact players we're excited to watch, both of the new additions the Colts have made, plus who we think is going to have a breakout year from the players that are already on the team. And then we're all on the team a year ago. And then we're also going to go game by game. We're going to give you a preview of what we think the Colts will do with their schedule this season. We're going to get into the weeds, tell you all about how we think the 2023 Colts are going to perform. It's that time of year, B. Scott. We're a couple of weeks from the first game of the season, and it's already shaping up to be an interesting year. We've had a lot of stuff going on before the kickoff even happens.
I know. I just want to go back to the days of when it's like you just were ready to get through preseason because you knew the Colts were never going to win a preseason game. But then once the regular season started, they were going to win like 13, 14 games and contend for a Super Bowl. Whatever happened to those days? Now we're like arguing with sideshow agents and it's a circus.
Yeah, I think you can trace the Colts woes all the way back to when they started winning preseason games. Because you're right. You knew every year they're gonna go 0-4 in the preseason, but they're gonna go 12-4, 13-3 in the regular season. So it didn't really. It still doesn't matter if you lose preseason games. But hey, when they started winning preseason games, that's when everything started to be on fire all the time.
I feel like the writing, that should have been the writing on the wall, that things were going to get bad quickly when our backups couldn't even look like they could contend in a game, and it took our starters. Because that year that Peyton went down with an injury, and there was some other injuries here and there, it was like an absolute train wreck, obviously, which led to Andrew Luck. But yeah, the Colts it's just like you want to be excited about them, but it's just like it's hard. It's really hard right now, especially when you hear other executives in the NFL go, that is the worst run team in the country, in the entire league right now. And you're just like, what?
Yeah. Even
worse than like the sideshows that we've come to know from the Dallas Cowboys and the Las Vegas Raiders.
Even like the Browns at times over there. Yeah.
I don't know. The world must be upside down. The Patriots are kind of on the same, not exactly the same ship, but it's just like,
yeah.
I don't know. Somebody's just like, can Jim Irsay just like step down and hand the reins over to his daughters officially?
I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, really? Nothing has been right. Everything has been upside down since the Colts lost the final regular season game in Carson Wentz's lone season in the blue and white. They lose to Jacksonville. They miss the playoffs. And things have just been kind of upside down ever since then. It seems like things were already kind of weird since the whole But when they were weird. Even when they were weird with Phillip Rivers, it wasn't weird. It was just like, oh, we're still winning. This is cool. And then it was just weird because the world was upside down in general.
Like he had a shot, at least with Phillip Rivers. But what was weird even last year is like the team would come out one week and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs last year. And did they end up I forget if they beat Philadelphia.
No, they lost. They almost beat them.
They almost beat Philadelphia. Yeah. So you look good against those teams. You have a great first game with your interim coach, Jeff Saturday, against the Raiders. And you're like, oh, you get a little optimism. And then it's like, nope, sorry about that. I think we should have realized how crazy this offseason, how things were going to start going once Jim Irsay named Jeff Saturday the interim head coach. That really, honestly, is kind of when the entire circus came to town. It's like you really you wondered, is Jim Irsay back on the painkillers? Back on the sauce? Because it's just, I don't know. And I'm worried this year. The future. I'm excited about the potential of the future.
Yeah.
This year, I'm not excited about this year.
Well, on that optimistic note, let's get into our offseason in review. We'll talk about some key additions here. The first quarterback the Colts brought in of the offseason was Gardner Minshew. They bring him in. Over his career, as his career as a starter, he's completed 62% of his passes for nearly 6,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. He was the backup in Philly. Of course, that was in Shane Steichen's system. Steichen, of course, named the head coach this offseason as well. Wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie is brought in. He had 423 yards receiving last year, which was a career high. He had 4 touchdowns a year ago as well, which was the second most for a season in his career. They bring in the likes of Pharaoh Brown at wide receiver, Taven Bryan at defensive line. They bring in Samson Ebukam on the edge. He had 36 tackles, 5 sacks, and a fumble recovery last year in San Francisco. They bring in Darrington Evans, a running back, and they also get kicker Matt Gay. He's an 88% field goal kicker for his career, 93% last season with the Rams. He's also 80% from 40-plus yards, so that's pretty good there. Also, of course, brought a lot of new faces in with the draft, Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs, so they got a lot of talent coming in.
Don't forget the one wide receiver that's probably going to make the roster here, who's had a really good training camp, but Brashad Perryman.
Yeah, Brashad Perryman's back in as well. Some key departures. The Colts lose Bobby Okereke to the Giants. He was second on the Colts last season in tackles with 151. He led the team with 2 fumble recoveries as well. They lose Yannick Ngakoue to the Bears. He was the Colts sack leader a year ago with 9.5. Paris Campbell also goes to the Giants. He was second on the team last year in receiving with 63 catches, 623 yards, 3 touchdowns. They also lose safety Rodney McLeod. He goes to Cleveland. He was third for the Colts last season in tackles with 96. He was tied for second on the team with 2 interceptions. He had a fumble recovery as well. Also, of course, Matt Ryan is gone. Stephon Gilmore is gone. So some talent coming in, but certainly some talent on the way out. So as we spoke about before, we have some storylines here as the preseason has gotten underway and began, and talking about the key additions. Of course, in the draft you get quarterback Anthony Richardson. He has been named quarterback 1, and so we're going to do a couple of hot or cold questions here talking about those preseason storylines. Of course, if you're new to the program, hot or cold is where we give you a take and we decide whether or not that take is a hot take or a cold take. And the first take that we're going to dive into is this one. Starting Anthony Richardson week 1 is the right call. And we talked about getting optimistic at the beginning of the episode here. I'm going to start off by saying that's a cold take, because I could sit here for a while and we could talk about how X quarterback started right away and was fine, and how Y quarterback sat for a while and was fine. I mean, you look at some of the comps that Anthony Richardson was, some of the player comps that he had coming out of the draft. One of them was Cam Newton. He started immediately, but I think he was a much better, more polished prospect than Anthony Richardson was. Another player comp that I believe might be a little bit more accurate and a little bit more in line with what Anthony Richardson could be is Jalen Hurts. And he didn't get a start until December of his rookie season. He made strides in his second season, but it wasn't until year 3 that he really came into form and got into the conversation as a top 5, top 10 quarterback in the league. Of course, that was last year. So I guess kind of where I'm coming from, we talked about, Anthony Richardson as a project. He's a raw talent. He can be really good, but he's definitely going to take some time to develop. With all of that discussion, what's the rush? We've only seen him throw 12 preseason passes, which is also, I think that's what makes this decision a little bit more peculiar. Not in the sense that, of course, you don't want your QB1 playing a lot in the preseason, but also he's literally, never, this is his rookie campaign. We're going into his rookie season. We need to see what he has and what he needs to work on. The more reps he gets, the better for him. And we've only seen him throw 12 passes. He's 7 of 12 for 67 yards and interception, all coming in the game against the Bills. And I would imagine it's highly unlikely we'll see him on Thursday against the Eagles in the preseason finale. So
we better.
I mean,
they didn't even dress him against the Bears.
Right. So I'm just saying we've not seen him really at all except for a couple of possessions against the Bills. Minshew, on the other hand, is really familiar in the system. He's not only had solid numbers as a starter, but he's also looked really solid so far in the preseason. 19 of 21 for 179 yards and a touchdown. The bye comes in week 11 for the Colts this season. So I guess in my mind, and I know, there's a lot of people smarter than me that make these decisions, but in my mind, it would be better to start Minshew until closer to the bye to give Richardson time to either be as prepared as possible for his first start or debrief from the handful of starts he had before the time off. I don't think one full season in college and a dozen throws in the preseason is enough to then just throw Richardson to the Wolves, especially when we've heard how raw his talent is. Because, you make the move from Minshew to Richardson, it's expected. But let's say he goes out there and he really, really struggles. I know that, the Colts aren't necessarily in a, the playoffs are at the highest, ceiling right now. It's not even something we should be thinking about going into this Colts season. We shouldn't be thinking about the postseason. But if he's been extraordinarily bad to start off his campaign, I mean, I know the odds are they're going to leave him in, but if you're making the switch from Minshew to Richardson, that's expected. If you're making the switch from Richardson to Minshew, it's a big problem. So I don't see what the rush is, especially in a year where, like I said, the playoffs, obviously every team goes into the season saying, oh, we want to make the playoffs, but realistically, the Colts aren't probably going to be there. So why are we rushing Anthony Richardson, kind of throwing him to the Wolves and kind of seeing what happens?
So I think this is a hot take, to be honest. And you've kind of touched on my reasoning. Look, this is not a win now season for the Colts. The Colts are not looking at all at, we think we can make the playoffs. Yeah, you might hear that rhetoric just because if the players and the coaches weren't providing that kind of rhetoric, then the fans aren't going to buy in. But yeah, there's going to be some fans that are going to be upset about this season. But I feel like if you play Richardson I think Gardner Minshew gives you a better chance of winning games. And I honestly believe that is not this year's goal. This year's goal is to give Anthony Richardson the reps needed to understand what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. The only way you are going to learn and see what the speed of game day action is like in the NFL is by playing. And, so that makes sense. However, the Colts are looking at bigger picture right now. They are looking at potential draft positioning because if you think about it, the Colts would love nothing more than to be able to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. His dad's in the Ring of Honor in the Hall of Fame as a Colt. What better? And he's also a player in a position of need to be able to help your future quarterback in Anthony Richardson. But it's not just going to, it's going to be tough to land a top 2 pick this year. Because as of right now, Arizona is in the catbird seat going into the season of controlling the number 1 overall pick and the number 2 overall pick because of the trade that they made with Houston when Houston jumped back up into the top 3 of the draft so they could draft, they draft CJ Stroud and the name of the defensive player from Alabama.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Williams,
yeah.
Anderson.
Will Anderson. There we
Will
go.
Anderson. Yeah.
We got
Will
there.
Anderson. They jumped up to draft Will Anderson and gave next year's first round pick to Arizona. So if Houston is as bad as people think they're going to be, which I'm not 100% positive on that, I think Houston's actually going to be better than the Colts. Then if Houston lands the number 2 pick, that pick then goes to Arizona, and then Arizona will be able to draft their quarterback of the future, and their wide receiver to pair with him. So if you are wanting the opportunity to draft Marvin Harrison Jr., you got to put yourself in a position to lose. And right now, the Colts look like they're staring down the barrel of a hefty losing season. You know, your star running back looking to get out of the city, looking to get away from the team. We'll get into that one later. And you're starting your raw rookie, which all signs point with that move, pointing all eyes are on the future. And to me, it makes sense. Gardner Minshew is, if it looks like, I don't know, he's a good insurance policy in case there is an injury that happens. But Gardner Minshew is that epitome of the veteran backup that you want to assist in the learning process of your young, raw rookie quarterback. He's going to take on that role of helping him prepare and teaching him how to prepare as a starting quarterback. So that way, when he gets into the game, when Richardson is in the game, all he has to worry about then is understanding the speed of live action NFL. So to me, it makes sense naming him as a starter. I wasn't shocked when they said he was going to start, but at the same time, I don't think I would have been shocked if they said Gardner Minshew was going to start either. To me, it wasn't. Both ideas of who should start made sense to me, but it really showed me which way the Colts are kind of aiming for what the outcome for their season is internally, what they're kind of aiming for.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, given how raw he is, I just would have thought they would have gone, because I mean, yeah, I mean, there's still even if you don't think that they should have waited until the bye just for me is a convenient, like, oh, we've got 2 weeks, we can use, you know, we can debrief and all that stuff. But I think even if you're like, okay, Minshew's going to start the first 2 games this season, let's say, well, at least you could have those 2 games to be like, okay, like, because I mean, Anthony Richardson isn't just going to be standing on the sideline holding a clipboard, just, you know, minding his own business. You know, Gardner Minshew's going to go over there and say, especially having been in the system, this is why I made this read, this is why I did this. And I guess he can still be that as the backup. He can be like, hey, this is why you should have done this or whatever. Like, I just think it would have been better to have, you know, kind of ease him into it than be like, all right, not only are we going to give you no preseason snaps, pretty much, we're going to also then be like, here you go, week 1, Jacksonville, have fun. So I don't know. I think given what we've heard, I mean, because I mean, look, I guess the pessimist in me is like, if it's super bad, what is that going to do to his psyche as, you know, a quarterback, especially with this, with not being as polished of a prospect as some of the other guys.
Yeah, that thought did cross my mind as well. But if you kind of know what the team is looking like this year as a whole, these guys are smart. They know, like, some of these guys are like, yeah, this team's not going anywhere anytime soon.
I don't mean just the team in general. I don't think that
messes with your psyche as much.
I don't mean necessarily the team's success. I mean, like, if Richardson goes out, right? If Anthony Richardson goes out, let's say his first 2 games, he throws. Let's say his first 3 games of the year, he throws 12 picks and has 2 interceptions. I know that's like really crazily bad. It has 2 one or 2 touchdowns. Let's say.
Okay.
That's not great. That's not a great thought process.
But what you can point to is and go, hey, look, you're a rookie. That's fine. You're going to take your bumps. You're going to take your lumps this year. I mean, just show him the record book. Show him the Indianapolis Colts record book and show him who holds the record for most interceptions thrown as a rookie. That's Peyton Manning.
Right.
Peyton Manning had an awful rookie season. Awful. He threw the most interceptions in Colts history. And that didn't mess with his psyche. He just used that as a learning opportunity. And from what I have heard about Anthony Richardson, he's going to be very similar. Like, he knows he's going to take his bumps. He knows it's going to be a rough go here and there, but he's going to take those opportunities and learn from them to better himself. So I don't have as much of a concern about his psyche. But yeah, look, if the Colts were in a position that they thought they could contend in the division, I think you would see Gardner Minshew as the starter. But the Colts know, hey, we're not contending for anything this year except a really good draft pick. So why not let Anthony Richardson be out there, grow that rapport with some of your offensive players that are going to be around in the future, learn, trial by fire. Sometimes that works best. And for a guy that everybody said, yeah, he's super raw, but what he needs the most is reps. Well, he's not going to get the reps being the backup. He's going to get the reps in the game, struggling through the games potentially, but it's all for the better. I think this all is about preparing this team for the future. It's not about the here and now. We need to just put all that thought out of our minds. It's all about preparing for next season and beyond, when this team could potentially start working its way back to being a contender in the division and hopefully then contending in the AFC and then contending in the league as well. So it's going to be a process. And I think what people need to do is stop listening to Jim Irsay. Jim Irsay still wants to blab on about winning as many Lombardi trophies as possible. It's like, look, this team has to learn to crawl again before it can even walk or before it can even run. And that's the stage we're in right now, is that learning to crawl again, getting the right people in place, preparing for the future, not the here and now.
Well, one person that probably not, who knows if he's a part of the future. He's barely a part of the here and now at the moment, and that is Jonathan Taylor. It leads us to our second take of hot and cold, which is, or hot or cold, which is a team will trade a first-round pick or an equivalent package for Jonathan Taylor. And when I'm looking at this, first, I want to take a look at teams that have multiple first-rounders or second-rounders in 2024. That is the Arizona Cardinals. They have 2 first-rounders. The Chicago Bears, they have 2 first-rounders. The Texans do as well, but I don't see the Colts dealing Taylor in division unless it's an insane package. But
the Texans still have 2 first-rounders?
They do. Are
you sure that's Arizona doesn't have 3 first-rounders?
No,
because I thought the Texans traded.
Because they have the extra one from the Browns. They have from the Deshaun Watson trade. Oh, yes. They still have, yeah. So I don't. Now you have me second guessing myself. That maybe they have multiple second rounders, but they still do have draft capital at the top of the draft next year.
Oh my gosh! So no wonder they were able to make that move.
Right, exactly. The Green Bay Packers will have an extra pick in either the first or second round due to the Aaron Rodgers trade. How that will play out. And the Eagles have 2 second rounders, but they don't have the draft capital overall to package much else. So really, we can rule out of those teams. We can rule out the Texans, Packers, Eagles, leaving the Bears and the Cardinals. And so I'm going to say this is a hot take because according to overthecap.com, the Bears are the second in cap space in 2024. Now, I will admit the salary cap stuff confuses the heck out of me, but that means Chicago will not only have draft capital, but they'll also have the cap space to sign Taylor to a long-term contract that he wants. So that leads me to make this statement. This is based on no source, no information, but hey, if I'm right, this will be really cool. And that is, I predict that the Bears will send a 2024 first rounder and their 2024 fifth rounder for Jonathan Taylor. They have an extra 4th, and even though
that's a generous package.
Yeah, I think it's a good package. Two picks. Well, and what's
a 1-year lease?
But they're a team that can sign him though. That's the thing. Okay. They can sign him. So think about this though. First of all, this offense would be insane to watch. Justin Fields, Jonathan Taylor, DJ Moore. That's going to be a nutty offense to watch. That trade puts them. I mean, who's not, saying that they're an NFC North contender? The NFC North is the most wide open it's been in years. I mean, yeah, people are high on the Lions, which they should be. Yeah, people are high on the Vikings, which they should be. People, I think, are holding out, to see what the Packers might look like with Jordan Love. But there's no team that you go into this season and say, yes, this definitively is the team that's going to win the NFC North. Any of those teams can potentially sneak up there, and if the Bears add Jonathan Taylor, that automatically puts them in a position to be like, okay, let's see what this season holds for us. If Taylor's healthy and has another outstanding year, then they're in position to sign him long term. And I know I threw 2 picks in there. It's wishful thinking, but Christian McCaffrey. Now I know Christian McCaffrey is more dynamic than Jonathan Taylor, but Christian McCaffrey did get 4 picks in his package last year, and even though he's more dynamic, he has been more injury prone over the course of his career. Because remember, Jonathan Taylor last year was really the only year that he really dealt with a lot of injuries. It was the year before, obviously that outstanding 1,800-yard season, and before that, I think it was 1,300 yards in 2020. So like, last year was the outlier as far as we know, as far as his injury is concerned. So yeah, generous package for sure, but I mean that puts the Bears right there. And honestly, you know what? I have to. Our Colts, Chris Ballard won't make these trades, so I have to live vicariously through other GMs and what I hope they'll do. Because I know the Bears would make that move. Maybe not that specifically, but if they could make a package that could get them Jonathan Taylor and put them in pretty much the catbird seat to potentially win the NFC North, I think you make that deal. So I think the Bears will trade a first rounder to get Jonathan Taylor. And I think someone brought it up. I saw a post. I can't remember who it was. It was on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now. And it was, the Colts are not willing to pay Jonathan Taylor top billing, to a long-term contract, but are expecting top billing in the trade. And like, that's kind of the unfortunate side of how the running back position is right now and how it's viewed. But yeah, I think there is a team out there. I think the Bears would be perfect to make that trade. And I think they're a team that could do it. So yes, I think he will. I guess the question was what it was. Will a team trade for a first round pick for Jonathan Taylor? I think they will. I think it's the Chicago Bears. I think they'll do that.
I'm gonna say this is cold. This is cold. Bleacher Report put out an article just this afternoon about what NFL execs think the Colts can realistically get for Jonathan Taylor. And not a single one of them said a first round pick. Most of them said a day 2 pick, maybe a second, one second round pick, or
so the Bears have 2 second rounders, I think, or with only one, they have a position. Yeah, they could easily be like, okay, we've got 2 first rounders, so we don't need a second rounder theoretically.
Right.
But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I think you're looking at a day 2 pick or a day 2 with a late day 2 and early day 3 combo. For a player that is has 1 year remaining in their contract, I don't see a team giving up a first round pick for it. Christian McCaffrey, when that trade was done, he had 2 years remaining on his contract. So teams were like, yeah, that's good with us. But I'm also saying it's cold because I don't honestly believe there's going to be a deal found. Because, yes, the Colts have told Jonathan Taylor, you are free to go and seek out a trade, find a trade partner and everything. But part of that equation is also him finding a team that will be willing to pay him or, pay him what his agent is wanting him to be paid. I don't think he's going to find that. I just don't. Unfortunately, the NFL does not view the running back position as a prime position anymore. They know they can go into the draft, the back end of first round, second round, and find a young guy that's going to cost half the amount that these veterans are wanting, and he's going to be healthier. But at the same time, for some reason now, running backs just do not have the same shelf life as they used to. I don't know if it's because the NFL, the defenders are bigger, stronger, and they're hitting harder, You just don't see the players anymore like the Adrian Petersons, like the LaDainian Tomlinsons, like the Corey Dillons, the Marshall Falks, the guy Emmett Smiths, the guys that play a very long time and see very minimal drop off until they get into their mid 30s. And when you start seeing drop off in most players, I mean, you're seeing that just about in every position, it seems like, if you really want to look at it. The only position that you want old at anymore, it seems like, is quarterback. Every position now, once a guy gets to his late 20s, teams are starting to go, oh, that's too risky. I don't know. We don't know if we want to invest that much money in somebody that is going to be 30. It's like, really, the NFL was run by 30-year-olds for the longest time. Now it's you want young. I don't know. And what's funny is, though, at the same time, is that the salary cap keeps going up. And, that's a different story for a different day, though. But I don't think Jonathan Taylor and his agent are going to find that partner that agrees to pay him in the future what he wants to be paid. I just, if they're not going to find it in the Colts, and the Colts really want him to be a Colt for life, and the Colts are also very generous in giving out deals to rookies that they want to keep in their system on expiring contracts. They're very generous with that. I mean, sometimes it's come back and haunted them, but they have a history of that. So it just kind of shows you what exactly he's asking for. And if the Colts aren't willing to do it, I don't know who else is. And that's going to that's going to really make finding a trade partner hard, especially if it seems like, man, I'm going to have to pay you that much and also give up draft capital. No, you know what? We'll wait to pay you next year when you're a free agent, and we won't have to give up draft capital.
Yeah, that's also a fair point, is that, they potentially, it is adding a rental. But I think, I don't know, because when they say seek a trade, will he be able to like talk to the teams that he wants to go to? Is that what essentially that means?
It gives his agent permission to talk to teams, and it's pretty much kind of like feeling out the free agency market.
Right. So I mean, you'll know who, and I mean, I guess you're still right with the whole draft capital thing, but like that's almost assuring, though, that you won't have to outdo, because like that would be the only counter argument to that, is that you would just know, like, okay, if I'm the Chicago Bears, I know for a fact, or I mean, I guess not for a fact until he actually signs, but like we know that we have roughly a deal in place with what we're going to give him. We don't have to outbid anyone else in the free agent market. So that would be the only.
The thing is, you got to find a team that feels like they are a piece away from having something special on their hands, from winning their division, from making a deep run in the playoffs, making the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl. If they feel like that missing piece is a solid running back, and they are willing to make him a part of their future, that's the team you're looking for. So, like, for instance, let's take the Arizona Cardinals. Do they really want to bring in somebody like Jonathan Taylor that might help them win more games this year, and then they miss out on potentially bringing in Caleb Williams? Mm-hmm. Or are the Bears that confident in the down NFC North the NFC? Are they that confident that their division is that much weaker this year, that a running back like Jonathan Taylor is going to push them over the edge and not only win them the division, but help them make a deep run into the playoffs? That's the type of stuff that these teams have to weigh, and when bringing in someone like Jonathan Taylor and giving up that draft capital, because they can be like, you know what? Yeah, we want you in the future. We're willing to pay you that in the future, but we're just going to hold out until the off season, and we can just get you as a free agent. We're not going to give up any draft capital. So go ahead and just keep in your situation now. We'll see you next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. we're gonna move on, but just also throwing it out there, if the Colts were to trade Jonathan Taylor at the deadline, I'd also like to see him on the Bills. I think that'd be cool if they end up trading him. I think because they're a team that has struggled at the running back position for a while.
If they're going to make a trade, they're going to make a trade with either Philadelphia or Washington, just because that's the only two teams we make deals with.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I got very swept up in wanting the Bears thing to happen. But I do think, it's tough because this question was originally going to be, if the Colts relationship with Jonathan Taylor could be repaired. It's just a tough scenario because Jonathan Taylor has definitely earned it. He's had an outstanding 2021. He had one of the most iconic moments in recent Colts memory with his run against the Patriots to seal that game. He deserves to be paid, but I can also see, the state of the running back position in the NFL isn't great. I mean, you saw Saquon Barkley, who means his most. I mean, that Giants were a playoff team last year. And the Giants just basically kicked the can down the road and did a 1-year contract extension, and they're like, all right, we'll see next year. And I mean, that's the thing is that makes this all kind of interesting is the only way that Jonathan Taylor can kind of prove that he's worth it is to get out and play, and I just don't know what's going to happen. That's also going to drive his price down too, is that, until he gets on the field, we don't really know.
Well, and the thing is, like, when you look at DraftKings, even, there are no bets you can make. There's only one bet you can make on Jonathan Taylor, and it has nothing to do with statistics. The bet you can make on Jonathan Taylor is, if not the Colts, which team will Jonathan Taylor take his first snap with this season? Like, they don't have him listed for
like rushing title.
Taylor rush for over 1,800, over under for Jonathan Taylor rushing for 1,800 yards. They don't have, or Jonathan Taylor scoring over under 8 touchdowns. Nothing like that. No prop bets other than which team will he be on, if not the Colts.
It's wild. That's wild for sure. Although also you said the Bears were up there on the list. I'm just gonna say that. Okay, so so enough about players that may not play for the Colts this season. Let's get into the players that are gonna play for the Colts this season. We're gonna get into our players we're most excited to watch this season. We're gonna go from the additions that I mentioned earlier, as well as the draft, and then we're also gonna talk about who we think can have a breakout performance. Excuse me, as a returning player. For me, from who I'm most excited to watch from who the Colts brought in this season, I'm going with wide receiver Josh Downs. All reports from camp rave about his progression. The article from Horseshoe Huddle said that he was cooking Bears DBs during Colts joint practice with the Bears. We talked about what he did at North Carolina in our draft coverage. He was second team AP All-American, first team All-ACC last season with the Tar Heels, 94 catches, over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. Those 11 touchdowns landed him 7th nationally in that category with receiving touchdowns. He was also second team All-ACC as an all-purpose player, which is a nod to what he can do on returns. This preseason, we've already seen that kind of dynamic play out of him. 4 catches for 49 yards, as well as 5 kick returns for 87 yards. So we've seen him in quite a bit of roles this season. And with Ashton Dulin out for the year with a torn ACL, that's obviously going to be one weapon down. We've talked about all the drama in the running back room. That's, another weapon down. So, we're going to need as many weapons that we can get for Anthony Richardson. I think Josh Downs has really kind of asserted himself as one of those weapons that are going to be there for the Colts this season. From the returning players, I have defensive tackle for DeForest Buckner. He led the team in sacks the last 2 of the last 3 seasons. He had 9.5 in 2020, 7 sacks in 2021. Yannick Ngakoue took that crown from him last season with 9.5 of his own, but he's no longer there. He's also hovered around the top 5 for the team in tackles the last 3 seasons. He was 4th last season, but 2 of the guys ahead of him are now gone in terms of Bobby Okereke and Rodney McLeod. We hope to see more of Shaq Leonard this season. But regardless, Buckner is one of the veteran leaders on this defense that needs to step up this season. He's been super productive during his time with Indy, and I'm excited to see what he can do in year 2 under Gus Bradley. Some of the guys that were difference makers last year for the Colts on defense are gone, so I'm excited to see what he can do, this season in year 2 under Gus Bradley.
So, Josh Downs is obviously going to be an electrifying player, and everybody can't wait to see him and the tandem he and Anthony Richardson are going to make up for the future. But I'm going to go a little bit different. There's a couple players I got my eye on. One being Juju Brents, the Indianapolis native. He's apparently, now that he's healthy, he's been lighting it up in the defensive secondary, and they're very high on him, his length, his speed. I know when they drafted him, I was like, that's a great pick. I just think with the revamped secondary, I mean, literally the entire cornerback room is brand new outside of Kenny Moore. It's true. A lot of my favorite teams are going through that same scenario. But I'm really excited to see him. I think he could end up being a defensive leader. I don't really have I can't think of any player comps to him right off the bat, but I think he's going to be one of those special players. I'm also looking, the two other players I'm looking at, one of them is running back Evan Hull from Northwestern. A player comp that people have thrown around for not necessarily his speed, but his abilities on the field is Nyheim Hines. He's more known as a pass catching running back. So I think has the potential to add a little bit of a wrinkle into the offense, especially with the turmoil in the running back room. He's one of these players that can really take advantage of this and step up and have his moment. And then the other player I'm looking at, mostly because I feel like a lot of teams overlook this guy, and I know I'm probably going to butcher his last name, but Emil Kayor out of Alabama, who also played at Cathedral. He was an undrafted free agent of the Colts, and is having he's a massive human being. He's having a really good camp, and with the Colts offensive line, especially guard, where he is destined to look like he's going to play, he has a real opportunity to, move his name into that starting lineup or into the second team, at least, and provide really solid depth. When I saw the Colts picked him up after the draft, I was extremely excited about that, because I just felt like this is a guy that a lot of teams overlooked him because of his size. He didn't have a great combine, or he didn't move super well. But okay, in drills, yeah, he didn't move that well. But when you look at him on tape and you see what he's been able to do, and the history of offensive linemen at Alabama, and he played extremely well there. I feel like that's one of those sneaky additions that is going to pay off. And all of a sudden you're going to just start seeing his name appearing. But for me, the player that I'm most excited to see that's returning, I'm going to say Alec Pierce. We all talk about Josh Downs. We talk about Michael Pittman Jr., but the one player that Anthony Richardson seems to have had the most chemistry with, I mean, him and Josh Downs, obviously roommates, been together anytime Anthony Richardson wants to throw the ball, Josh Downs is there, blah, blah, blah. But we've seen some of the most highlight reel moments come from Alec Pierce this preseason in camp. I think we're looking at a potential breakout year for the second year wide receiver. I think having some consistency at quarterback, which is another reason I think they're starting Anthony Richardson, is to give these guys some consistency, because it's been a freaking quarterback carousel for that wide receiver room. I almost made the show not PG-13. But I mean, it's the truth.
Yeah.
So I think having some consistency at quarterback is going to help Alec Pierce, and I think he's going to have a really big year for this team.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Yeah, he's gonna have. I'm gonna get to him in here in a little bit as well. Player is for. We're gonna touch on real quick another player that is not with the Colts anymore. That is our player we think the Colts will miss the most. In 2023, I'm going with safety Rodney McLeod. You could really make the case for any of the four that I mentioned earlier, and even Stephon Gilmore, who I didn't list up there earlier. They all contributed and left arguably areas of need for the Colts in all those categories. But I went with McLeod ultimately because he was the third leading tackler on the team with 96. The pass defense for Indy was better statistically than the run defense. McLeod was second on the team in pass deflections behind Stephon Gilmore. He had 2 interceptions, which was the same number as Gilmore. And just barely, he was the cheapest of those options when he signed with the Browns for 1 year, $1.3 million. So the Colts, he's productive and cheap. So he's a guy that Colts could have held on to if they wanted to. And I know, obviously, they probably are going to, they drafted a couple of guys, that in this, for the secondary that can obviously, take over and probably be similarly productive, but it would have been nice to maybe hold on to him, especially with him being such a cheap option to get in free agency. So that's what I think the Colts will miss the most. So like I said, I think you could make the case for any of those players I mentioned earlier.
The player that I'm going to miss the most, that I think the Colts are going to miss the most, is Bobby Okereke. Look, it's hard to make up that kind of production with your team's second leading tackler. Yeah, I know Shaq Leonard's going to be back. And that helps. That's a big help. But having a dynamic tandem at linebacker is exponentially better than having just one solid linebacker. I think Zaire Franklin is up to the task of filling that role. And, I think he is set to have a breakout year as well. But, man, Bobby Okereke was just kind of one of those solid players that was just all over the field. I feel like this could end up being kind of like when they let Anthony Walker walk away in free agency, and they really missed him. They missed what he brought leadership-wise. I think what they're going to miss is the speed of Bobby Okereke and the athleticism that he brought to that position.
So before we get into the schedules, I do want to do kind of a revamp. Last year we did a new segment as far as preseason bets and stuff, and I kind of wanted to do something similar to that. And that is a segment called Playing the Odds. So we're going to give you 2 to 3 bets that you're taking for Indianapolis this season. All my odds are based on what DraftKings has. So here are some of the ones that I am taking this year for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm taking Anthony Richardson over 16.5 passing touchdowns. Right now, that's at negative 110 on DraftKings. The Colts play just 6 games against teams that were in the top half of the NFL in pass defense a year ago. 17 touchdowns would land him third. As a Colts rookie, one more than Jeff George had in 1990. This is obviously a more pass-centric NFL. Plus, you have one more game than George. Plus, I think he's a little bit better of a talent than Jeff George was. So I think it's not too hard to get yourself in kind of the mindset that he could get there. I could see him in the 20 range for sure. So that's where I've got Anthony Richardson there. Alec Pierce, his over-under is 575.5 receiving yards, and I think he hits that over on that one. Again, not going against a lot of teams that were strong defending the pass last season, and Pierce had 593 last year, even with the quarterback turmoil and turnover. So I think that with more consistency, he will have a good year. So good call on that one as far as players that were players to watch, at that position, because Alec Pierce could have a really good season. And then the one that's kind of going off the reservation here, and of course, this is the one I go most off the reservation. I forgot to write the odds down for. But the Colts over, I think it was like 600 is what it was. Colts over 7.5 wins. We'll get into the schedule here in just a moment. But let's just say I don't have them at 8+ wins. But I think when you get into the meat and potatoes of their schedule, you can really talk yourself into closer to 500 when you really kind of dissect the opponents, try to figure out, every which way. Their schedule is very interesting. It's not necessarily super duper crazy difficult, but it's also one that you could see them having, top of the draft type of a season, and you could also talk yourself into, well, they could get to 500. So I'm going to take over 7.5 wins for the Colts this season.
So this one, I love your bets. My first one is actually with Anthony Richardson. So as far as passing yards go, the over under is 2,800.5. I actually have him going over, which the odds for that are -105, whereas the odds for going under is -115. I think he'll get over 2,800 yards. And like I said, the team's going to have their ups and downs this year, but I think he can surpass. I think he's going to have close to maybe 3,000 yards. I don't know. I feel like that's I'm pretty confident in that bet. Then I also look at receiving touchdowns. I think if you're going to take one, this is a big one to take. Michael Pittman Jr. right now, they have the over-under set at 4.5 receiving touchdowns for him. And the odds right now are +125. I say take the over on this one. I think he could get 5 touchdowns. He's going to become a really big target in those red zone situations. And we saw how his ability to get free over the top showed last year. And I feel like with the addition of Josh Downs and having that third kind of player that defenses need to keep an eye on, I think Michael Pittman Jr. Has the ability to score over 4.5 touchdowns. And then otherwise, I don't know. I have struggles finding a lot more that I feel really confident in. But when I look at the wins total for the Colts, honestly, I'm looking at they right now the most likely for them right now the over under on 6.5 is -120 and the under is +100. I feel pretty confident in saying go ahead and take the under on that one. Heck, even if you want, take the under on 4.5 at the odds of +350. I think that could potentially be right around the zone of where the Colts are at about 3 to 4 wins.
So why don't we go ahead and use that as a transition to get into the schedule and tell you where we exactly think those wins are going to come from and where the losses are going to come from. Looking at the Colts schedule this season, they kick off at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The remainder of September is at Houston. Then on the road, they finish out the month at the Ravens. In October, they're at home against the Rams, at home against the Titans. They go on the road to play the Jags. Then they are at home against the Browns and Saints. In November, they go to Carolina. They play the Patriots in Germany. Then they close out the month against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In December, they're at the Titans, at the Bengals, at home against the Steelers, at the Falcons, and then at home against the Raiders. And then in January, they finish out the season at home against the Texans. So when I look at their schedule, I've got 3 kind of categories here. I've got wins, losses, and swing games. So games that I think could go either way. The wins that I'm confident in. I'm confident in wins at Houston. I'm confident in a win against the Rams. No clue what to make of them right now. I have no idea what to expect from the LA Rams. What's that?
Don't sleep on the Rams.
No, I think the Rams can be good. I just don't know what to think about.
The injury bug bit the Rams.
It really did, and I have no idea what to make of them. I think they'll beat the Buccaneers. I think they'll beat the Falcons. And I think they'll beat Houston. So I think they sweep Houston, they beat the Rams, they beat the Bucs, and they beat the Falcons. So there are my wins right there. Their losses. So that's what? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins that I have them at right now. Their losses. I think they lose both games to the Jaguars. The Jaguars were the division winners. The Colts can't win in week 1, and they can't win at Jacksonville. So there's 2 losses right there. I think they lose both games against the Titans. The Titans are going to be, those are the Jags and Titans are going to be the teams battling for the division. So I think they lose. I think they go 2-4 in the division this year, winning both games against the Texans and losing the games against everybody else. They lose at the Ravens. They lose at home against the Browns. They lose at home against the Saints. The Saints are one of those teams that were, one of the better pass defenses a year ago. They lose at the Bengals. And they lose at home against the Steelers, another team that they can't ever seem to beat, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The swing games are at Carolina, in Germany against the New England Patriots, and against the Raiders. So I have the Colts, honestly, solidly at 6-11. I think their ceiling is 8-9. Those 3 swing games, I have Indy losing the Frank Reich revenge game at Carolina because I can already see Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I can see that going crazy, with fans. I mean, whether or not you agree or disagree, there are going to be people on Twitter that are saying, "Oh, the Colts should have kept Frank Reich. See, we told you." And guess what? You could probably go through their tweet history and see all the ones wanting the Colts to fire Frank Reich last year. So I already know. I mean, look, I'm rooting for Frank Reich. I think the Panthers have a possibility of being decent this year. So I do think that the Colts lose the Frank Reich revenge game, but I could see that game going either way. So, I mean, if that switches to a win, there's 7 wins right now. I think the Colts lose in Germany. It's Bill Belichick going up against a rookie quarterback, so that's usually not a very good, that's not really a very good omen. But who knows what the Pats look like, and those international games are always a little weird, with how they play out. So who knows? Who knows what would happen? And I think the Colts can beat the Raiders at home, but that's in no way a gimme, because on the one hand, you think, with as bad as the Colts were last year, they won in the first game of the Jeff Saturday era last year in Las Vegas. It was also a game that 2 years ago with Carson Wentz, the Colts almost won against the Raiders. So who knows what the Raiders will be like.
That Raiders team's going to be Aiden O'Connell led at Las Vegas Raiders by that time.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it could go. Those games could go either way. I have the Colts beating the Raiders, but who knows? So I think you can talk yourself into 6, 7, 8 wins. I have them at 6-11, and I think 6-11 is a little bit more realistic.
So I will say I have the Colts at 4-13. I'm not as optimistic as you. So I honestly believe the Colts start off the season 0-4. They don't get their first win, and I'll say it's going to be a surprise win. They get their first win week 5 at home against the Tennessee Titans. I feel like the Tennessee Titans are they play right into the favor of like what the Colts are capable of defending the best. I don't think Derrick Henry is the same player as he was. And yeah, I think just at Lucas Oil Stadium, I have confidence that could be their first win. I don't have any faith in them beating the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't think the Colts will win week 2 at NRG Stadium. Look, last year they did everything in their power to not win that game. And they ended up with a tie.
You mean the Texans?
Houston. Yeah.
The Jaguars at first.
No, I know. I said I don't have any faith in beating the Jaguars. Okay. And then that's what I said. I don't think they can go in NRG Stadium and get the win. Like last year, they did everything possible there to not win that game. See, I do have them beating. I go back and forth. One of my swing games is against the Cleveland Browns. Do not know what you're going to get with that team, but for now, I'm going to say that's a loss. I do have them beating the Saints. Actually, let me make sure I got that one. I got it all right. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I had all my numbers correct. But yes, I do have them. I have them losing to the Browns. I have them beating the Saints at home. I have them losing to the Carolina Panthers on the road. I don't think the Colts are going to be a very good road team this year. Just FYI. Don't be surprised if the Colts go over on the road. Losing in Germany, which when you have a team that's contending for a high draft pick, this is an awful, awful opportunity. You want to actually show up really well on the big stage overseas. That's going to be bad. I have them winning at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay hasn't figured out their quarterback situation yet. Are they starting Baker Mayfield?
I think they've officially named Baker.
Oh, Baker?
I think, yeah.
Well, either way, Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, neither one of those are great options. So I have them winning there. I do have them losing at Tennessee, at Cincinnati, home against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's going to be a good team this year. Watch out for that team. Another toss-up game I do have them losing this, though. If there was a road game that the Colts have an opportunity to win, I think it is in Atlanta. That's another one of those teams, not sure what to expect. They're going to be playing Desmond Ridder this year at quarterback. A lot of question marks around that team, but I still give Atlanta the win there over the Colts. On my birthday, December 31st, against the Las Vegas Raiders at home, I do have the Raiders winning that game. But by then, Jimmy Garoppolo will be injured again, and Aiden O'Connell will be starting, and I will want to go to that game just to see Aiden O'Connell play. And then I have them finishing out the season with a win over the Houston Texans at Lucas Oil Stadium, because why not? That puts them at 4 wins. That keeps them at the under safely with the under 4.5. It like I said, I mean, it could. I think it could be I don't think they go any lower than 3 wins. I think 3 is the basement, is the floor. But honestly, then it could be as high as 7 wins, in my opinion. I mean, the Cleveland Browns game is winnable. The New Orleans Saints game is winnable. The Carolina Panthers game, winnable. I mean, and then, even opening the week 2 at Houston is potentially winnable. However, Houston's going to be much improved with CJ Stroud at quarterback.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'll say this. I think even if you think the Colts are going to go 3-14 or 4-13 or 7-10 or 8-9 or 6-11, whatever it is, I think I do have confidence that this season will look at least. I'm thinking this season will at least give you some cause for hope. We'll show you some good things and be like, okay, you know what? We're on track. We're on track for something.
Don't look at the record this year. Don't look at the record. It's not about the record this year. What I want to see out of this team is I want to see the moments that between the young players connecting. The light switch seems to have flipped for Anthony Richardson. All right, we are seeing that breakout year from Alec Pierce. The young secondary is coming together and performing at a higher level. It's all about looking at how well they perform. If they're competitive in every single one of their games, that is great news. That's as good as winning the Super Bowl this year, because that shows you this team has a bright future. I would rather have heartbreaking losses because the Colts were right there up until the end than mediocre games where you squeaked one out and you squeaked enough out that you didn't make the playoffs, but you're not getting a good draft pick. And
seeing a field goal fest on Thursday night.
So many questions. You just don't know. Can this team be better than that? I would rather be competitive and rack up the losses and think, okay, the future is bright with this young team, because your young team is going to take its bumps. I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. I just don't want to see a non-competitive team lose a lot of games, because that's hopeless. And I don't want to see a bumbling team that just isn't good enough to win a lot of games, but not bad enough to lose a lot of games. It's just kind of like a mess. Pretty much like what we've seen the past few years from this Colts team. If the Colts look like they have when Carson Wentz was the quarterback, we're in trouble. That's how you know we're in trouble. I don't want to see that. I want to see competent competition, even if it means we lose.
I mean, the spin zone on that is obviously if they're in the middle of the draft order or whatever, it means that they were winning games, and that's going to be because of Anthony Richardson, because of Josh Downs, because of Alec Pierce, because of Michael Pittman. It's going to because of the defense. It's going to be because
I don't think I phrased that correctly. It will be good if the Colts are picking in like the 12 range. I'm okay with that, especially if you saw growth from the start of the season to the end. Like if they win more games on the back end of the season, I'm okay with that. I just don't want to see like we saw with the Carson Wentz season, where it was like start off strong, hyped up, okay, and then just completely the wheels fall off at the end of the season. I don't want to see that. That's what I'm meaning by having that mediocre record that gets you just missed the playoffs and you're in the middle of the pack of the draft. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But if they play up, things gel and they just missed the playoffs and they're playing well, and it's because they stumbled out of the gate a little bit because of the young players, but they progressively got better as the season went on. I'm okay with that too. I am 100% okay. I just don't want to see, like I said, a Carson Wentz style season.
Yeah, and hopefully we won't get that. I think there is some cause for optimism for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for tuning in, hanging out. Remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go follow us over on Twitter. Yeah, I still have the old Twitter logo on the scene here, my recording software, at 3C Media Sports.
Still go back to it. There's a way.
What's that? Wait, what? What are you saying?
There is actually a way. I'm not sure how to do it. But
to go like on your phone.
Get the old logo back.
Yeah. Because I'm not vibing with X. Not really. No, I don't. It looks weird to me. Remember to go over if you're not already. If you're listening to us on Spotify, you're listening to us in your car. Hey, for one, pay attention to the road, bro. But also, remember, you can go over to the YouTube channel. Check us out over there. A lot of content, especially with the high school football season getting underway, so go check us out over there. Also on TikTok, thank you guys all for the love. We had our first live stream for week 1 of the high school football season. It was a little scuffed because at the last second I had to change things up, but we're looking forward to week 2. We'll be live again breaking down that, so go over to the TikTok channel for that. Remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter or X at Brandon_Scott87.
And next week we will be back. We'll be talking about, we'll be doing more of an NFL preview on the whole. We're going to be talking more football. It's going to be a lot of fun. But until next week, have a good one, everybody.